So I'm going to talk actually about AI and publishing transformation, but I'm going to start actually with the transformation of my own company and how we got there. Assuming I can get this thing to cooperate. Not going very well here. Well, let's see what happens if I do that. All right, there we go. So there's a picture of me. I know it's got to be 38 years ago, maybe, when I was a tech writing consultant. And then, a few years later, we launched our first books, which were stapled. I still remember the very first review that we got, where the author was like, "These people don't know anything about publishing. The books don't have spines; they have staples. They don't have an index." And we were just trying to basically fill in the gaps in our business. We were feeling our way. Eventually, we developed a set of very distinctive covers using Dover imagery, and eventually became a full-fledged publisher. But it took a lot of years and a lot of exploration. And then, a few years later, we launched the very first commercial website. I have some text there on the slide, which I'm not going to read to you, but it's a passage from the Wall Street Journal in 1993 saying advertising is about to hit the internet. And yes, I was the first person to do advertising on the World Wide Web, although it wasn't advertising as we think of it today. It was a replacement for direct mail advertising. It was this insight that a website would replace the URL would replace the bingo card. Some of you are old enough to remember bingo cards in magazines, where you basically would read an article or you see an ad and it would say circle number 132 and you get this little card that you'd mail in and then they would literally mail you a brochure. And it was like, wait, the web looks like that, except the URL replaces the bingo card and it's perfectly reasonable. So we actually built a catalog that people could put there, that we actually had to host the website because there weren't that many of them. There were only a couple hundred at the time. So we were very on the very front end of the web. We sold that, but we also did the very first PC-based web server, a product called Internet in the Box. I started a conference business in 1997, which we shut down in 2020 because of COVID. And then in 2001, we started a service called Safari Books Online. Some of you may remember that. And the thing that was probably the most unique thing about that was that we invited our biggest competitor, who at the time had an internal group called the O'Reilly Killers, to join us in a joint venture. And but I was triggered to do this after I was pitched by a company called Books 24/7. And over dinner, I did the math for them of their offer. And I said, effectively, you're giving us 6 cents per book to split with our authors. And that's just not viable. And I said, we have to go build a model that actually will create enough revenue for publishers and authors to make this viable. And of course, today we have, that is the core of our business. We are still a publisher, but the publishing is really one of many inputs to a learning marketplace, which still includes Pearson, although we bought them out as an owner in 2014. So we have tens of thousands of technology books, tens of thousands of hours of video, and something that we developed about 5 or 6 years ago where we deliver live training on the platform as well. And most recently, we've kind of built an AI-powered answers engine where you can ask questions in plain language and get answers, which is very, very powerful. It uses the books as a database and takes you directly to the page, versus the old sort of library catalog style of search would say, well, the answer is probably in this book, go look at it, and then you get to the book, and then you can have, it's probably on this page, go look at it. Literally, will take you right to the answer. And that also goes for the video. We'll take you right to the minute of video where somebody is giving you the answer to your question. It's pretty impressive. But so I want to give you some lessons from how did we get there? Well, the first thing is understanding what job we did. And I was a classicist originally, and that's why all the books I chose here from my library are actually Greek or Latin or in translation. These are all books today, but they actually they do very different jobs for their readers. And of course, in the case of Homer, they didn't even start as books. They started as tales told around a campfire or around in the village, using, being made up on the spot and extended over hundreds of years before they were finally written down. So, but if you think about the Odyssey, the heir of the Odyssey or the Iliad are movies. They are novels. They are computer games. They're not necessarily, they're certainly not people sitting around the campfire telling stories, or the bard, the traveling bard. The geography of Strabo. A self-driving car is one of the heirs of what Strabo was doing back then. Certainly, maps was an intermediate phase, and there's a whole talk I give you thinking about sort of the arc of knowledge, where it was one of the variations of this talk I was going to give, where you think about, for example, what if you think about the problem being solved by this test called the knowledge of the streets and monuments of London, which is the test for London black cabbie for many years. Literally people study for it for years. It changes their brains. They've actually done brain studies. It's literally you become a human GPS. The test is you're at this point in London. You have to get somebody to this point, to recite the turn-by-turn directions you would take to get there for any one of thousands of points in London. It's utterly bonkers. And was the answer training, better manuals? No. It was the GPS, which allows anybody to have that skill. So we have this really interesting ways that depending on what job you do as a publisher, how technology affects you. And the last one I have there is Aristotle. He'd probably have a Substack today. So we define, this is actually, I went through some of my old slide decks from many years ago. This is one from about 2002. And I was explaining what we really do. And I just read Built to Last, which talked about companies having big, hairy, audacious goals. And I said that our goal was to change the world by spreading the knowledge of innovators. And we would work to find interesting people and technologies and amplify their voice, right? And so, when we define that as our job, you can understand why we weren't just a book publisher. We also did things like start the first commercial website, why we realized, we needed to actually do the first ever market research study of the advertising potential of the internet, why we had to build the first commercial PC-based web server, why eventually we launched conferences, because it was all in service of that mission, that job that we were trying to do. So there's another part of what we thought about as our job, which I think is probably more directly and more fundamentally for all of you, which is publishing. I've always thought is a kind of gatekeeper between authors and readers. And when you're a gatekeeper, you have to add value. You have to be somebody who adds value. And it's kind of interesting because one of the most powerful features of our online platform is this live training that we introduced. This is literally synchronous live training where an instructor gets up there using something that's kind of like Zoom. We actually use On24 for this, and delivers a course. A very popular feature of the platform. Delivers a lot of revenue to the publishers and authors. And it's kind of interesting because there's such a cult of the customer, and the stories you hear from Silicon Valley. You focus on your users. You focus on your users. This product feature came about because we were focused on our authors. We knew that the revenue from books was decreasing. We were concerned about this. We said, what's going to keep our talent? That's how we refer to people. Our talent motivated to keep creating useful content. We have to find a way to pay them more now that the computer book market is shrinking, and the royalties are going to be smaller, and there's other attractive things for them. And so we actually developed this feature as a way to get more money for the talent, and then it turned out to be really popular with the users as well. And this is something that is very much I think in play today for all of you. I just happened to see on Twitter the other day a Patreon, which is How many people here know about Patreon? You must all know about it. Okay. They did a survey of their creators, and they had the tweet, 70% of creators say they feel screwed by big tech platforms, right? So that, there's this fundamental change in the way big tech platforms are acting, where they used to be focused on sending traffic to people, and now they've turned extractive. And that's actually kind of my side gig right now. I'm a visiting professor at University College London, working with Mariana Mazzucato, who's a sort of superstar economist and author, on basically applying some of her ideas, but also some of my ideas to this is a paper that I'm working on right now called Measuring Rents in the Information in the Attention Economy. That's actually what it's called. The ideas here have really been shaped by my own focus on the platform, because I see the way that Amazon and Google have increasingly been competing with their supply-side ecosystem. Whether it's through advertising or just extracting, in particular in the case of Amazon, their ad business is entirely extractive. You'll literally search for a product by name, and you'll see an ad for the product, which most people are going to click on, which is just a tax on the supplier. And then down below the fold is the organic search result, which used to be up at the top. Google, too, has pushed organic results down in favor of ads. So I'm exploring that behavior. And I'm exploring it because I'm very mindful that at O'Reilly, we are not a monopoly. And we have to keep our suppliers engaged and happy, right? And so I'm kind of going, oh, okay, that's a good test for how to think about when somebody has too much market power, when they don't have to care about both sides of a two-sided marketplace. They only care about one of them. So I'm trying to put some economic teeth into that. But that's just sort of a side hustle. But it goes back to one of these fundamental ideas that I always had at O'Reilly, which is that you got to create more value than you capture. And so much of what I tried to do in my career was to create value for others. My conference business started, and this is actually something called the Open Source Summit. These are the leaders of the most popular open source projects. But that name, open source, was agreed at this meeting I organized because I was trying to tell a big story to help all of these things get adopted. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll benefit because we publish books about these technologies, but really, I'm trying to tell a story that will help this group. Similarly, in 2004, after the dot-com bust, when I coined the term Web 2.0, it was like, it literally was an outcome of a strategy session we had at O'Reilly, where we said our goal is to reignite enthusiasm in the computer industry. Because everybody was like, it's all over after the dot-com bust. And we said, no, it isn't. There's all this new stuff that's happening. And this was also a key part of this, as I mentioned earlier, building a viable publishing model for online publishing. We literally were going, we've got to solve this problem. We believe that ebooks are going to be a big part of the future. Digital is going to be super influential, and it has to have a business model that will support the authors. So, and that's sort of, I think that idea of creating value for all of the constituencies, not just your customers, I think is a really important part of what we live with. So there's a piece here also which is thinking about long-term trends. And I've written quite a lot about this. I wrote a piece that you might find interesting back in the beginning of 2021 called Welcome to the 21st Century that went into some of my thinking about trend spotting and how you look at trend vectors. But there's just this piece that I look back, preparing for this talk, I was looking back at some of my old talks and old articles. And it was something I wrote in 1993 in an internal company newsletter. It was called The Long View. And I was just talking about, we were investing, we were a tiny company, we were investing all of our profits into this thing called GNN, which we eventually sold to AOL for quite a lot of money. I was trying to explain to the company, why are we doing this? It was just about like, we have this belief that the internet, the web, the World Wide Web is going to be huge, and we're investing into this future. And there were only a couple of hundred websites at the time, but we really believed in it. And we also published our first ebook in 1980, I think it was 1986. 11 years before, no, long before. When was the Kindle introduced? Not till 2007. So we were ages before that because we were exploring. We got into SGML, which then turned into HTML. I mean, to XML. But before that, that led us to the World Wide Web and everything we started doing there with. But it was just like so. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is follow these early things that are happening. Trust that the future is going to unfold. And kind of invest early in things that you think are going to matter. And the fourth lesson I want to take from my history is know when to burn the boats and go all in. And that phrase "burn the boats" is actually, it's often attributed to Hernando Cortez, but actually Alexander the Great did it long before when he launched his invasion of the Persian Empire when they landed on the shores of Anatolia. He had his men burn the boats. There was no going back. And we've done this a bunch at O'Reilly, and probably the most significant one for this group is, we had a $10 million a year business selling our books directly from our website. And we shut it down, and even though it was actually our biggest single channel, it was actually bigger than our revenue from Amazon at that time. But the reason we did was we wanted to go all in on our subscription platform. And so we wanted people to come to O'Reilly.com, and we would have to not juggle one against the other and try to persuade people, well, we'll actually go here, go there. And so that kind of commitment to the future, there's a time when you really do have to commit. We also, took a pretty bold move of shutting down a $40 million events business in March of 2020. Right at the very beginning of the pandemic, because we just did the math and we said, okay, this business is going to kill the company, even if it's only a duration of 3 or 4 months because of the way the conference business works. And so there are times you need to burn the boats. And anyway, but that principle of burning the boats is also an excuse for me to have that illustration. There is Alexander and his men burning the boats. That illustration was generated by DALL-E 2 this morning with the prompt, painting of Alexander the Great burning his boats when he invaded Persia. And that came back. The first version actually had a boat that looked more like a Spanish galleon, and that might have been influenced by the fact that DALL-E 2 knew that this phrase is also associated with Cortez. But I did a little bit, hit the refine button, and there was a pretty decent illustration, right? Generated in 30, 40 seconds by an AI. So, and that's where I really wanted to get here with you, is just, we're at a point that feels to me very similar to the point that we faced in 1992 when we discovered the World Wide Web, which is an utterly transformative technology that's going to utterly upend everything we know and believe about how content is created, how content is distributed. And it's the burn the boats moment is you got to go all in on this. Just like in 1992, it was we spent years trying to persuade, for example, the phone companies, like, the internet is coming, you guys have got to get on board. No, they weren't interested. We did make a deal with NTT in Japan, but there's some amazing stuff happening today, and get on board, explore it. It's super easy. That's one of the things I want to tell you. So, DALL-E 2. I did a few more illustrations. I thought I might do a live demo, but they're always sort of, half the time they don't work. But okay, here is the prompt. Basically, the way you do these things is you give it a prompt, right? The prompt here is impressionist style painting of attendees to the conference. Right? It gives you a set of 4 alternatives. If you pick one that you like, and then you can say refine, it'll give you more of them till you get to one that you like. But you can also just change the prompt. Here I said attendees at the conference, this time in Renaissance painting style, or this in realistic style, and this in the style of a comic book, right? And these were generated, again, if this were a live demo, it would have taken about as long It took about as long to generate each of these as it's taken me to explain it, right? The same thing is happening here with a tool called GitHub Copilot, which is a front end to another of OpenAI's APIs, which is basically code generation. GitHub is a source code repository originally for open source code, but now it's pretty much for all source code. It's owned by Microsoft. And they said basically about a third of all the code that's now submitted into GitHub is generated by this AI. So content generation is real. Again, in some ways it's just a search engine. It's a parrot, right? People sometimes refer to these things as stochastic parrots, but they forget that we are also stochastic parrots, as we human beings are. And these things are at this stage where they're getting better, scarily fast. You know, we're at a tipping point. I've had conversations, I've interacted with some of these large language models, and you know, they really are truly remarkable and getting more so. So you just have to imagine where this trend line ends up. And there's a quote I've been using in my talks for years from J.C.R. Licklider. He was the DARPA program manager who originally funded the internet. But in 1960, he wrote a paper about what he called human-machine symbiosis. Actually, he said man-machine, but I update him because he wasn't politically correct, you know, today. And he said the hope is that in not too many years, human brains, and he'd say human brains, and computing machines will be coupled together very tightly, and the resulting partnership will think as no human brain has ever thought and processed data in a way not approached by the information handling machines we know today. Now, I've used that in the context of explaining Google as a human-machine hybrid, for example. I mean, there are all the ways that, you know, Google is harvesting the collective intelligence of hundreds of millions of humans, and those signals are not only the content, but also in how we use Google, what we click on. You know, one of my favorite ways of explaining this collective intelligence aspect of Google is one of their strongest signals is something they call the long click, which is somebody clicks on a result and then they go away, right? Versus if they click on a link and they come right back and then they click on the second link, it obviously didn't satisfy them. You know, so again, we are in this dialogue with these things. And that's really becomes very, very apparent as you know, engage with something like DALL-E or Copilot. It's really a conversation. I'll give you a bit more of that. But this stuff is really getting easy. There's so many tools. I want to show you something. This is from a demo that our CTO just put together the other day. I'm going to see if I can play this for you. This is a video training that we translated into Spanish and used deepfake technology to create lip syncing. And oh, you can't hear it. I don't have a. I can swear. You hear it? No, can't hear it. That's all right. You get the idea. Good enough. Didn't think to plug in the audio. But basically, it's quite creditable and done in just a couple of minutes. And it's kind of interesting. Oh, sorry, wrong click. Let me find. I need to get to there. You know, this is a list of Andrew Odawan's the tool chain he used. He said, OpenAI Whisper to do the speech to text to get the transcript. Google Translate to translate it to the target language. Google Text to Speech to turn that into an audio version of the target language. Wave to Lip to combine the video and the new audio for lip syncing. Google's Colab Notebook is the computing environment. And then something called FMMPEG to do all the video munging, you know, stripping out the audio file, making the silent version of the clip, etc. You know, so this is literally done. You know, I made the suggestion to him, and he did it 2 days later. He had this, and another project he's working on is rating content difficulty. You know, we don't actually have, we've never branded all the books in the platform based on their content difficulty, but you know, feeding it into GPT-3. And this is, again, gives you this sense of the prompt engineering and how that works, you know, dealing with an AI. Somewhere I stuck in here. I should have got it ready before I got up here. This is literally the prompt that Andrew gave to GPT-3. So to give you a sense of how this works, this is not programming. He typed in, I have a library of various learning materials consisting of books, courses, and videos. They are geared to a technical audience, usually software developers, engineers, or data scientists. There are also some non-technical topics like business or design. I want to classify each of the following learning materials into one of the following categories: beginning, intermediate, or advanced. A beginner topic is one that's suitable for someone who's new to the topic. It might contain words like introduction, basics, getting started, fundamentals, or tutorial. Many of these will be on specific technical subjects like Python, JavaScript, React, SQL, or Linux. An advanced topic is one that's suitable for someone who has a lot of experience with the topic. Might contain words like, anyway, continue. And it says, here are a few examples: learning Go, beginner; designing data-intensive applications, advanced; head first Python, beginner; clean code fundamentals, beginner; fluent Python, intermediate. Anyway, go on the list. He says, given this, would you classify fundamentals of Python as beginner, intermediate, or advanced? Right? And returns beginner, right? And then he basically created a Google Cloud function that takes that result as an API endpoint, and now you just put in a title, and it classifies it. Now, you actually can do that also by giving the full description of the book. We actually have a search engine that actually has the full text of the book, so we can do a much better job. But the point is, once you build this, by actually just talking, in this case, typing, to this language model, it can do tasks like that. It's truly remarkable stuff. So we're really coming across the democratization of AI. Anyway, I've got to hurry up. There's something called Hugging Face you might want to check out. It's basically the GitHub of machine learning models. And then there's a startup explosion. This is one I haven't really explored, but a place called Runway. They're basically doing text-based video editing, like literally you explain what the edits you want and it'll make the video. And a company that we've really done a lot of work with, and I really want to spend a little time on this, is a company called Miso. They basically do personalization and search. They built our answers engine, and they ingested all our content, and it's truly remarkable because search is kind of like a whack-a-mole problem. We used to do search on our site with traditional search engines, and you're always tuning it, and you're always finding new problems, and it feels like whack-a-mole. You fix that, but it causes a problem over here. You fix that, it causes a problem over here. Well, the whole essence of machine learning is it takes many, many factors into account at once, because it's actually learning from the content itself. And that's when Miso built this answer search engine, it was truly remarkable for us. And this is super important to me because of this issue that I'm concerned about with the platforms and them using their algorithms for self-preferencing. Because I do think that there's a real need for us to build AI to actually help manage our complex systems and manage them fairly. And so I'm spending a lot of time thinking about platform economics and how to actually allocate attention to for the benefit of our users and for our publishers and for our authors in a way that's most fair. And actually, as we build these personalization engines, thinking about that, because we are in fact running what Adam Smith called an invisible hand, as is Google, as is Amazon. Now I see them trying to do it for their benefit, and we want to try to make sure we do it for the benefit of everyone. Because as Paul Cohen, who was the program manager for AI at DARPA, at one point said, the opportunity for AI is to help humans model and manage complex interacting systems. And I'm super excited about that aspect of the work we're doing here with AI as well as everything else. But the point I'm making is that machine learning is not a future thing anymore. It's happening now. It's happening. It's being radically democratized. This is as much a moment as VisiCalc and the PC and the web browser for the internet. It's a transformational moment for the entire technological landscape, and you should really be digging in and adding it to the kinds of things that you're thinking about. Well, thank you.